Who is going to be the next man up? Mike McDaniel was officially fired by the Miami Dolphins earlier today, and that leaves a vacancy, not only at the GM position, but the head coach position as well. And we're going to look at the top candidates, in my opinion, to fill that vacancy as we start this process over the weekend, and we'll likely find out who is going to be the next Miami Dolphins head coach over the next couple of weeks. I do want to start by saying this. The GM decision will impact a lot. It is being reported, and I have alluded to it all week long, that Miami's moving through this GM process extremely quickly. And I think we will have a GM officially announced and hired as soon as Friday afternoon, but at worst, Friday night. And we'll have to stay tuned for that. But the GM finalists for that position are John Eric Sullivan, the VP of Player Personnel for the Green Bay Packers, Josh Williams, the Director of Scouting and Pro Scouting for the 49ers, Chad Alexander, the Assistant GM for the Chargers, and Champ Kelly, the Interim GM for the Miami Dolphins. I do want to make it clear, Eric Sullivan and Josh Williams were the only two candidates to interview over Zoom and then get invited to Dolphins headquarters for an in-person interview. Read into that as much as you want. Chad Alexander and Champ Kelly made it to the Final Four, but their first interview and likely final interview is taking place on Thursday or Friday morning before a decision might ultimately be made. And I want to make sure you are subscribed because we had you covered. We went live for the firing of Mike McDaniel. We're going to go live for the hiring, not only of the GM, but also the next head coach of the Miami Dolphins. Hit that sub button. No other channel has you in the know more on Dolphins football. Obviously, the number one head coaching candidate for the Miami Dolphins is going to be John Harbaugh. And I don't think this is a surprise whatsoever when it comes to looking at who could be the next Dolphins head coach. He is the top candidate out there. Every single team with a head coach opening wants John Harbaugh. The two top options for him seem to be the New York Giants or Miami Dolphins. Now, there is a possibility that a team like Green Bay, Buffalo, and Philadelphia fires their head coach this weekend if they lose, and Harbaugh might become the top option. I mean, he's got a 61.4% career win percentage. He has been to the AFC title game 4 times in his career. He's won a Super Bowl, Coach of the Year in 2019. He is a home run. And I know some people are going to be a little bit skeptical because of the concerns in Baltimore over the last couple of years and the fact that he's 63 years of age. But I think he's someone that can set a tone, set a culture, and raise the floor of the Miami Dolphins as we go into a period where we will need the floor to be raised because the Dolphins are in such a bad spot with their quarterback as well as their overall roster construction and cap space. But why is he number one? Not only did we just highlight the positives with him, he has an extremely strong relationship with Stephen Ross. That is widely reported. And he would have control with the GM as well. I truly do believe that if Chad Alexander becomes the next Dolphins GM, John Harbaugh's chances of becoming the next Dolphins head coach rise in an exponential fashion. Now, I also want to make sure the Dolphins fans are aware this will be a long, drawn-out process for the Dolphins head coach vacancy. It's not going to be fast and furious like it has been with the Dolphins GM spot. Harbaugh is only going to start taking interviews next week, and this could drag out for multiple weeks until Harbaugh ultimately chooses who he wants to go to his next team and or that team hires him. Because in a weird scenario here, Harbaugh has as much say into where he goes as head coach as the team who is hiring him has. There's a chance that both the Giants and Dolphins want Harbaugh, and Harbaugh has to choose between the two of them. But I mentioned that little GM factor here. There's a report out there that the Dolphins have not gotten into contact with John Harbaugh since he was fired from the Ravens on Tuesday. I disagree. I mean, I know everybody's reporting it. I just have zero belief that that is actually true. Schrager with an important note that we noted as well here. If Chad Alexander gets the GM job in Miami, it certainly feels like he will try to recruit Harbaugh to become the next Dolphins head coach. But who is it, folks? Who is your top Dolphins head coach candidate? Is it John Harbaugh? Is it someone else? Get down in the comment section and let me know. Number 2 on the list, and I forgot to mention, this list is not who I want ranked. This is the list of names that I think Miami is going to go after ranked. So this is not my opinion. This is what I think is going to happen. And I have Jesse Minter as that second option, the current Chargers defensive coordinator. And out of all of the potential first-time NFL head coach candidates, there is not a coach with a hotter name than Jesse Minter. That is what all the buzz has been around this head coaching cycle. The headliners are going to be the former head coaches like Mike McDaniel, like John Harbaugh, like Kevin Stefanski, former head coaches like Vance Joseph and Robert Salah and Mike McCarthy. But if you're going after a guy who would be a first-time head coach in the National Football League, Minter is, I think, almost the unanimous number 1 option. And why do I have him at number 2 for Miami? Once again, like John Harbaugh, there is a very strong connection with Minter and Miami. Minter led Michigan in 2023 to a national championship under Jim Harbaugh. Obviously, Jim and Minter both go to Los Angeles, where they've been the head coach and defensive coordinator in each of the last 2 seasons. Why is this important? Stephen Ross, the owner of Miami, is a Michigan alum and one of the largest donors to Michigan football and their NIL fund, which means if he is going to look for his next head coach, I think he's going to put a lot of stock into a former Michigan man that helped win a national championship for that football program. And I'll bring this back to the GM discussion one more time. I talked about how if Chad Alexander's the GM of the Miami Dolphins, and that's announced in the next 24, 48 hours, that it increases the likelihood that John Harbaugh is the head coach. I would also say it increases the likelihood Jesse Minter is the head coach, because you would have the connection between Minter and Ross from Michigan, but you would also have the connection of Chad Alexander and Minter, as the two have worked together inside the Los Angeles Chargers organization the last 2 years. I think if Chad Alexander gets hired, I would bet almost my entire bank account that the head coach of the Miami Dolphins would either be John Harbaugh, and if they don't get John, it would be Jesse Minter. Number 3, Vance Joseph, the current Denver Broncos defensive coordinator, former Denver Broncos head coach in 2017 and 2018, and people want to forget the former Dolphins defensive coordinator. We'll get into that in just a second. But today's show is brought to you by Mando. It's a new year, which means new me, new you. And the only thing I'm bringing from me in the 2026 that I had in 2025 is Mando whole body deodorant that is safe to put anywhere on your body and smells fantastic. My favorite scent is Mount Fuji. That's without a doubt my favorite. Mando has so many great products outside of deodorant. They have body wash and my personal favorite, deodorant wipes. Mando has you covered because it's clinically proven to block odor in all day and control odor for up to 72 hours. There is no day that the deodorant wipes were more necessary than today for me. Why? I was on a walk when Mike McDaniel got fired. I sprinted 2 miles to get back to my house to film that video. And what did I have to do? As I had no time to shower before going to work? Bingo! You nailed it. I love it. Some men mask their BO with sense. Mando men get the job done right. Don't mask it, Mando it. Available in retailers near you, or head to shopmando.com, because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use code CHAT at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide plus free shipping. shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and hello to long-lasting freshness. I briefly mentioned it just a minute ago, but yeah, there is familiarity with Stephen Ross and Vance Joseph. Joseph was the defensive coordinator for Miami in 2016. Now, obviously, he left to take the Denver Broncos head coaching job. It didn't go well, and people want to throw out, he won't return because he already worked for Miami. I think that is absolutely asinine. I've seen a couple people say that on Twitter responding to me. Why would that matter for Vance Joseph? Because the only way it really matters is if you are a head coach that gets fired from an organization and they want to bring you back as a coordinator. By the way, Joseph did that. He literally got fired from Denver and returned a couple years later to become their defensive coordinator. So there would be no issue with Joseph being another candidate for Miami, and I think he would actually welcome it. And if you just take it back to, that's 5 days ago, January 3rd, Dan Graziano of ESPN reported that Vance Joseph would be a top candidate for the Dolphins head coaching position if Miami ultimately moved on from Mike McDaniel, which they did. So outside of Minter and John Harbaugh, who are, I think, the top two most likely candidates for Miami, that's why I put Joseph at number 3. I think there was already registered interest from the Miami Dolphins front office and ownership group before they fired Mike McDaniel. Joseph is an elite evaluator of talent. The Broncos defense has been top 5 in the NFL in each of the last 2 seasons, and that comes after a pretty bad year in 2023. I think he would be a good hire for the Dolphins, but I do want to make this clear. If the Dolphins end up hiring Vance Joseph as defensive coordinator, I don't know if he would call plays. I'd be fine if he did because he is that good of a coordinator. He has no offensive background. They would have to nail the offensive coordinator hire in Miami if they hired Vance Joseph as their head coach. Same could be said for the 4th candidate here, which is Robert Salah. And I can't really guarantee you or tell you why Miami would be interested in Salah. I just think they would be. So maybe this is really the only candidate that's on this list because I think would be an intriguing option. People will dismiss Robert Salah because of his struggles in New York as their head coach for 3+ seasons, but I'm a fan. I have said this consistently that he is not to blame for the struggles in New York. That would, in my opinion, be placed solely on the GM, Joe Douglas, and their consistent failure of being able to find a quarterback, Zach Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, some very poor decisions on the trade market, and outside of that. But the reason why I like Salah so much is players love playing for him. Like, you saw it in New York. They never gave up on him. He is a leader of men. When he speaks to the media and before and after games, you have confidence. I think that he is the complete opposite of Mike McDaniel. Great leader, gets the players fired up, and people just love it. Like, you watch San Francisco this year, folks. The 49ers defense is a train wreck. It's not very talented to begin with. And then you factor in they've had so many injuries. Nick Bosa banged up. But guess what? Robert Salah has kept him in that 49ers team competitive, and they're in the playoffs. I mean, the 49ers defense this year, 13th in points per game, 20th in yards per game. Against the run, they're 11th in yards per game. They are 25th in passing. So definitely struggling defending the pass, but they have no pass rush. And I will throw out there, he has a connection, obviously, with a GM candidate of Miami, a finalist, Josh Williams, who works in San Francisco and has been there since 2011. Williams and Salah have obviously worked together this season in San Francisco. Final candidate that I'll talk about on this list today, Jeff Hafley, the current Green Bay Packers defensive coordinator. And I think this is another name that Dolphins fans need to keep an eye on. He personally will catapult up the rankings from number 5 to number 2, potentially. I think Harbaugh will be the number 1 no matter what. But Jeff Hafley, if John Eric Sullivan is hired as Dolphins head or GM, who is one of the finalists and probably the best option, regardless of what it could mean for the head coaching search, I think Hafley catapults to number 2 behind Harbaugh because they obviously worked together the last 2 years inside the Green Bay Packers organization. And Hafley has experience being a head coach in the past, just not in the National Football League. He's 46 years old. Hafley was the head coach at Boston College for 4 years. Now, it wasn't the most success you've ever seen at the collegiate level. 2020, 6-5, 6-6 in 21. Worst year in 2022, 3-9. And then in his final year as head coach, they went 7-6 and won the Fenway Bowl. Fun trivia. Who did they play? SMU. That was the answer. Hopefully you got it by the time I told you. Either way, I don't think you could look at his success in Boston College and say, oh, he's a good NFL head coach or a bad NFL head coach. It's Boston College. That's one of the worst athletic programs from a Division I school in the entire country. Fun fact, little tangent. In college basketball, the ACC coaches were asked about head coaching opportunities and which is the best program. Every single ACC coach had Boston College at the last. It's a horrible spot to try to win. So difficult, which is hard to imagine because it's in the Massachusetts and Boston area. But what he's done at Green Bay is the reason why he's a candidate. 2024, Packers defense top 10 in the NFL. 6th in points, 5th in yards, 7th against the run, and 13th against the pass. Now, it has decreased a little bit in 2025, 11th in points, 12th in yards, 18th in rushing yards, and 11th in passing yards. But once again, this is one of the best units in all of football. It's a top half unit in the National Football League, and he's had to deal with a lot of injuries in his own right. Micah Parsons obviously getting hurt and missing the back half of this year. Not really an elite cornerback there. They don't have elite corners, and they're still a solid defense against the pass. The truth is, you look at all 5 options that we talked about on today's show, I think all 5 guys are good. If Miami hires any of these 5 that we just highlighted in depth, I don't think I could complain. Now, if they went somewhere else, I think there's other good options as well. Like you think about the other top 5 head coach candidates besides the 5 we just mentioned. I'll list off Kevin Stefanski, Chris Shula, Clint Kubiak, Anthony Campanile, who also coached in Miami in the last decade, and Mike McCarthy as an option. Are these 5 better than the 5 we talked about? I think you can make an argument for Shula, Stefanski, or Kubiak, but I would probably say I would be more excited if the Dolphins hired anyone from the first 5 names we talked about on today's show. And we'll have you covered every step of the way. When the Dolphins start to request interviews for their head coach vacancy, we will have you covered. So make sure you subscribe. And when the Dolphins hire a GM in the next 48 hours, we will have you covered there as well. So join the channel.